Today, we are starting part 2 of a series that we're calling In the Flesh, Why Christmas Still Matters. What makes this whole thing important? Because, Christmas is really just a birthday, right? And there aren't any other birthdays that the world stops and everyone decorates everyone's houses because one birthday, right? President's Day is the closest thing we have to that, and all I get out of that is no mail. So what is it about this birth that the world stops and we put trees in our houses and lights on the outside of our houses and change up the way we do everything and drink eggnog? What is this thing? Why is this birth so important? So we're spending 4 weeks in December talking about the Incarnation. That's the word for God born in a person's body, or God coming alive in the flesh. That's really what it means. Incarnation, that carne, like carne asada, that's it. It means meat. So God took on meat. What is up with that? And that's, you just got a lesson in Latin. Congratulations. So anyway, that's what we're talking about. That's what we talked about last week. We talked about the Word made flesh. We looked at the opening of John 1 and that poetry to describe how God is involved in creation and yet created in this person. And I encourage you to hop on YouTube or Facebook, our Facebook page, and look at last week's message. I think it's a great intro to this series. And today, we're going to talk about faith made flesh. Now, I recently heard an 11-year-old girl describe one of the silly things that she used to believe way back when she was little. When she was 10, she believed this ridiculous thing a whole year ago. She used to believe that on any given night, she could wake up having shrunk down to teeny tiny size, like to Barbie size or smaller. And perhaps, I don't know where that belief came from. Maybe she watched Honey, I Shrunk the Kids one too many times. Maybe it was like an Alice in Wonderland inspired thing. But either way, she had a whole plan for what would happen in the event that she woke up one morning in miniature size. Every night, she'd leave a ruler that bridged from her bed over to her nightstand so, she could get across easily enough. And there, she'd find a set of doll clothes that she'd wear, and a little hammock that she had made from rubber bands, and then also a folded over piece of paper. And inside that piece of paper, she had already written, "Mom and Dad, be careful, I shrank during the night." And then she could just unfold it, and it would say that, because, it'd be hard to manage a pencil when you're little like that. So, very, very thoughtful. All the plans are in place. So in some ways, this girl set up all these precautions because she was scared of what might happen if she really did shrink in the night. But if we're honest, she probably kind of was hoping for it to happen too, because wouldn't that be cool to be a miniature-sized person and all that stuff? And, we all, one cookie would last you for 6 years sort of thing, right? That'd be kind of neat. And that's our general impression of what it means to have faith. That we hold some idea or other in our hearts without any evidence at all, and we wish for it to somehow be true. That's kind of our general impression of this word faith. Faith is not reality. They're different things. Faith is something else entirely. Faith is this squishy, ethereal soup of hopes and dreams that kind of floats around somewhere between our brains and the heavens. Does that sound about right? Like our general cultural impression of this idea of faith. And that's the kind of faith that skeptics of the world point to when they say that people of faith are insane, and that having faith in anything beyond this world is unreasonable. That's the kind of faith they're talking about. But I want to talk about a different kind of faith today. Not this squishy, intangible thing, but there's something deeply tangible and deeply real. Because there's this other kind of faith. We hear about people whose faith is the only thing that sustains them through times of trial and tragedy. And I know some of you have been in that place where your faith was the thing that got you through. That thin, wispy word faith is the thing that allows people to hang on. Perhaps you've already heard of this now famous inscription found on the wall of a concentration camp in Cologne, Germany, after the Holocaust. One of the former prisoners wrote a poem in the wall where they were being held captive. And here are the words they wrote. I believe in the sun even when it is not shining. And I believe in love even when there's no one there. But I believe in God even when he is silent. I believe through any trial, there is always a way. So how do we hold these two realities together? That faith is so impossible to grasp, and yet sometimes it is the only thing we have to hold on to. What I think is happening here is that we're actually working with two different definitions of faith. The first one is a fog that doesn't amount to much, but whatever this second faith is, the one that holds us when we're hurting, the faith that stands strong when hope is lost, the faith that leads to poetry during the Holocaust, that's something else altogether. There's nothing elusive or squishy about that faith at all. It's as solid as the ground under our feet. It's as close as the skin on our bones. And so to think through this question of how we move from this wishful thinking faith into this flesh and bone faith, we're going to take a look at the ancient words of the Hebrew prophet Isaiah. He lived in dark, dark times, a time when it was hard to have faith. There was violence all around him. His whole nation was about to be conquered and dragged away in chains. And all around, people were asking this very same question that the Holocaust victim was asking. God, where are you? What are you going to do about all this? So here's Isaiah's reply. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in a pitch-dark land, light has dawned. And there it is. The promise of God that the darkness that surrounds us all will not last forever. There is a light. Even if you're shrouded in darkness now, a light will shine. If the worries of life had blinded you to God's love and beauty, don't worry. God is up to something. The light is coming. In our neighborhood this year, my kids have been enjoying the Christmas lights as people have been putting them up around us. And there's one auspicious home in our neighborhood. The whole street is dark. There's hardly a single Christmas light on the whole street. And as you're driving down this straight, long street, down at the end, as you're driving, there's one house has a blue and white LED snowflake that does this number. It goes bloop, 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 brrrr. And it is arresting. I think all of the children on different occasions have noticed it independently because you can't not see this blinding light at the end of the dark road that we're on. It's impossible not to see. That's the kind of light that Isaiah is describing here. It's a light that is unavoidable, even though your circumstances are shrouded in darkness. There's something that we're all headed toward that is light, that is good, that does illuminate our world so that we can see one another for who we are and love the ways that we want to love. There's something coming, but right now we know it's still dark. And then after that, Isaiah goes on to say, as on the day of Midian, you've shattered the yoke that burdened them, the staff of their shoulders, and the rod of their oppressor, because every boot of the thundering warriors and every garment rolled in blood will be burned, fuel for the fire. Whoa. Things just got real. This is different than Christmas lights right now. We just moved from light shining on someone somewhere to a monumental shift in the way the world works. God is going to end all slavery. God is going to lighten the burden of laborers. God is going to end all oppression. And I love this part, if you're looking in verse 5. Soldiers won't need their uniforms anymore. They'll be as good for firewood as anything else. Did you catch that? Because we won't need them. How about a world where we don't need soldiers? I like that idea. So that means that this tidal shift in the way the world works, a shift away from the powerful and toward the powerless, this shift is going to come about in some totally unprecedented way. This is the thing that people hope for at their lowest, and it's something so much more substantial than wishful thinking. And God is promising through these words that it will come. So what is God up to? How will God shine light into our darkness? What will be God's means of overturning the oppressive powers of this world? Well, here it is. Here's the promise of how God is going to swoop in and save us. From Isaiah, a child is born to us. A son is given to us. And authority will be on his shoulders. He will be named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. There will be a vast authority and endless peace for David's throne and for his kingdom, establishing and sustaining it with justice and righteousness now and forever. The thing that God is doing to cut through the darkness, to break the powers of oppression in the world, to set things right, is to send a child. And the earliest followers of Jesus looked at this passage from the prophet Isaiah and said, I know who that child is. I know who that child is. He was born in Bethlehem. Angels sang at his birth. Shepherds ran to see him. The highest of heights and the lowest of the low, angels, shepherds, meeting in one place around this child, Jesus. And in Jesus, we see someone who takes all the wishful thinking about things turning out okay someday, I hope, and he turns them into action. Jesus risked everything by telling outsiders that they belonged, by healing the sick without religious approval, by forgiving sins without going through the proper channels. We were expecting Isaiah's words to be fulfilled by an army, but that army's uniforms got thrown away and burned in the fire. Instead, it's this simple, humble person born into this world in the same naked, helpless fashion as everybody else. It's almost like we needed someone to take that wishful thinking and put it into action. And that's what I mean this morning when I talk about faith made flesh. Christians have gotten a lot of mileage out of theological debates for a couple thousand years now. We've gotten really good at talking about faith. And that's led to a lot of people thinking that the faith is mainly about the things we say we believe. But if faith stays abstract as beliefs, abstract as these little beliefs that I just have to think about, then do I really believe? Do I really have faith if it doesn't translate into the things that I do? In Jesus, we see faith made flesh. In Jesus, we see the promise of God for hope and restoration and peace realized in a person who could show us what that really looks like. We see that there's a way to live into this faith that then invites this faith to be something alive within us. Maybe that's why we throw ourselves into generosity at Christmas in a way totally unlike any other time of year. We care for neighbors and strangers. We give to the poor. We adopt whole families so that they can experience Christmas in the same way we would. And maybe we do that. Well, we do that for a lot of reasons, but maybe one reason is so that we can be faith made flesh, so that we can reflect just a bit of that truth behind the Christmas story, that God came to us to offer us love and life, so that we can offer love and life to the world. I know that this time of year can be especially hard for some of us. If we don't have enough, if we're mourning, if we're struggling, it can be really hard to see other people with their perfect Christmas card families. And if that's you this year, please hear me when I say, you are exactly who Christmas is for. If you're hurting this year, you are exactly the person that Christmas is for. Even if you feel left out on the outside, looking in on other families sitting around the fire, roasting chestnuts and whatnot, you are the one that Christmas is for. The promise of ages past, that God would end oppression and war and free us from our labor. The hope that peace will reign is made flesh in Jesus. And may that faith that God's love is alive and at work in your world be made flesh in your life this year. Amen.